Hello everyone. Just to introduce myself, I'm Lauren from Middlesex FA and I'm our inclusion officer. And I just wanted to put on a session today to talk about LGBTQI plus and football. So we've got some amazing guests on our kind of session tonight. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get them to introduce themselves because they can do a better job than what I can. And then I'm going to hand them over to Beatrice from Pride Sport, who's going to be asking loads of questions and getting some good conversations going. So if we can start with Gemma, do you want to just introduce yourself, Gemma?
Hi, yeah, I'm Gemma Teal. I'm the founder of LGBTs, which is the LGBTQI plus supporters group for fans of Brentford FC.
Great, thanks. And Luke?
Hi, Lauren. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Luke. I'm the first team manager of Ashford Town Football Club, and I also own a few little coaching businesses.
Great, and Emma?
Yeah, Emma, I work for a learning disability charity, and then I also coach a grassroots team, and I'm also co-founder of an over women's football team.
Great, and then Beatrice, do you want to introduce yourself and then kind of start the session?
Brilliant, thanks Lauren. Hi everyone, thanks to everyone for tuning in tonight. My name's Beatrice Thirkettle. I, as Lauren mentioned, work for Pride Sports, and I'm also the youth panel co-coordinator for Football versus Homophobia, and have a bit of a background in football development as well. So like everyone else, a big football person. So I think, really delighted that Middlesex FA have put this session on tonight, and is really an opportunity for our panellists to share their experiences and also share some really great kind of take-home messages and actions for people watching along. So, really looking forward to, sharing those discussions and hopefully seeing what comes out as a result of it. But I think it's really important actually to perhaps start at the beginning for our panellists. And, we know that even today, young people face challenges and anxieties about coming out in sport. Perhaps Emma, I'll start with you. What was your experience of being an LGBTQI person in sport growing up?
So I came out in my 30s, so I was always closet. So I was really unsure what I was, so identity-wise, and it wasn't till obviously 30 I realised I identify as a lesbian. It was challenging because 20 odd years ago, any girls that are involved in football or sport were labelled a tomboy. So I had that label majority of my youth, but it didn't really bother me. I took it as a compliment that actually I was quite good at sports, not just football, but sports in general. But I was exposed to a lot of sport. I went to private school in Twickenham, so I had a lot of opportunities, and I was very privileged that I played a variety of sports at that level.
Fantastic. And Luke, perhaps interesting to kind of hear Emma's experience, where she perhaps wasn't able to be kind of open. What about your experience growing up, certainly in kind of playing as a boy in football?
So, well, I actually came out when I was a child still. I came out when I was literally had just turned 16 years old, and I was already playing in a first team senior environment, and I was really looked after. I'll be honest, and I'm not sure whether it was just because it was my age, and at 16 I still looked about 13, and I think I was so well looked after. And I never had any issues. And for me, I know it's not the same for everyone, but I've been it's caused me no problems at all being LGBT in sport. It's not held me back in any way whatsoever. Wherever I go now, I don't really need to come out because people know who I am, and they know that I identify as gay, and they know my story. And I'm met with nothing but love and support. And I think it's proof that you can make something of yourself in sport still, and it's not a barrier. It will be, but again, I'm also bright enough to know that that's because potentially might be because I still, it's a really bad term to use almost, but I probably act in a way that's like maybe not associated with gay people. I mean, I'm not camp, so to speak. So if someone was a little bit different in their mannerisms, whether they would have had the same love and that, I'd hope so. But obviously, I can't say that.
I think that's really interesting, Luke, isn't it? Because you're touching on the environment there, and the inclusive environment that we create in football, and we'll certainly be having a look at that a bit later. I think that's really important. Gemma, what about you? Perhaps more kind of as a football fan growing up. We know it can be quite an intimidating space sometimes for football fans. Do you have any early memories as a young LGBTQI person in the stands?
It's interesting. My experience is not unlike Emma's in a way. I came to those realizations about myself quite late in life, and so yes, obviously going to football, I heard certain things, but it wasn't until much later that I suddenly realized that actually they applied to me. So it was one of those things where, and I think this is probably true for a lot of people in football. Certainly, I think for women football fans in general, you grow up and you hear certain chants and things like that, and it's all funny or fine until you think about it. And that's not to say, in the way people say, oh, people want to be offended. Like I don't want to be offended, but you think, hang on, no, wait, these people are using me as an insult. And these people are saying I don't belong here, and no, this is my home. Do you know what I mean? I was a football fan long before I had any concept of being bisexual, and so to me, you feel like you're in this family, and then suddenly you come to this realization that actually, does this family want you? And that for me was the big thing. So yeah, it wasn't so much that I grew up not feeling welcome, it's that I grew up feeling welcome and then suddenly thought, actually, am I? And that hit quite hard.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing, Joan. The power of language is absolutely crucial in creating that inclusive space, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I'd like to kind of take that a little bit further, really, that first question, and really consider, why does LGBT plus inclusion matter? Perhaps has it made a difference to kind of your kind of experiences individually, and why should it really be of importance to Middlesex FA, to Middlesex FA's network of clubs and leagues? Emma, we'll start back with you again.
So for me, inclusion's everyone. So it's not just LGBT plus, it's everyone, people with disabilities, gender, age, the protected characteristics that fall under the Equalities Act, things we can't actually physically change. So actually, when you think, what does LGBT, inclusive mean? No, it's inclusive. So drop that. How do we make football accessible for everyone? Doesn't matter what gender, age, or anything like that. Because this question sort of not irritates me a little bit. Is it should be inclusive. So you need to drop the front bit, because if you are inclusive, what that means is you need to look at your terminology, communication, how you talk to players, what you're putting on social media. Also think about pronouns and how people identify themselves. So I don't think LGBT inclusion, I just think inclusion in general. How can we get more people to the club, whether that's grassroots, so involved as players or admin? How can we get basically our local area, so if we're in, say, Kingston, can we get our local population involved in the club, but they need to represent the local area. So if the local area has, say, New Malden near Kingston has a high proportion of Koreans, so how do I get them playing football as well? So I think LGBT inclusion is inclusion in general. So it's listening to people, find out what they want and actually listening to them. So sometimes, which I sometimes get annoyed of, is just tick boxing. Oh, it's LGBT History Month. Oh, we've got to do something. Actually, you've done nothing all year. So how do I feel that organisation or that club is actually welcoming everyone as well? Because, as I say, there's a lot of people that are really unsure about their sexual orientation, and there is no coming of age. Oh, once I hit this age, people come out or just unsure on their identity. So again, it's making people feel welcome. But yeah, that's my opinion.
I think you make some great points there, Emma, and very, very much agree there. We really are making sure that our spaces are inclusive for all types of people. Luke, what about you? You've had a very positive experience growing up. I wonder what the impact of that inclusive environment was for you, and those feelings of being accepted and being welcome, and then thinking kind of more bigger picture. Why in LGBT plus inclusion is important and should be important to clubs and organisations.
I think the most key thing with it all is visibility. So when I grew up, there was certainly no positive stories with LGBT people in the news. There was certainly no one that, like people like Gareth Thomas hadn't come out in rugby. There was certainly no sports people. And literally until I got very, very drunk one day and came out, I thought it was going to be a secret that would die with me. And by having that visibility and by showing young people that actually there are lots of other people similar to them that are achieving, whether it be playing, whether it be supporters, whether it be secretaries, whoever, the more people that are visible, the less they will feel weird about themselves or feel that they're different or feel that they're strange. And the more they'll be comfortable with themselves, which can only help their mental health, which is obviously a big part of sport as well. And it will allow them to again, be more successful. You're never going to be successful in anything hiding who your true self is. No worries.
Gemma, so same question to you, and I guess you're also able to answer from more of a fan's perspective as well. Of why we need to have this discussion around LGBT plus inclusion, and certainly think about fans that are turning up.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to what the others have said. Really, I think the two big things for me is obviously inclusion in general is the aim, and I think sometimes it's good to highlight certain types of discrimination, and sometimes it's good to go for overall inclusion. I think both have their place personally, and I think one of the places where specific mentions of certain types of discrimination are useful are in places where historically it's been really obvious. So I think, for example, with racism, but also very much with homophobia in football, as in going to games as a supporter, I think it's really important that we do make it clear to people that they are welcome, because they have historically been made unwelcome. And I think that's quite an interesting distinction. Obviously, you can say, yeah, people haven't been included in lots and lots of parts of life, but it's quite rare, I think, in most places for people to be stood in a scenario where there are several thousand people singing songs about how they are in some way or another inferior. And so because of that, I think it is important for football clubs and the players and everything around that kind of infrastructure to actually say, okay, we acknowledge that you've not been made welcome in the past, but you are welcome now. And I think that's quite important. And I think in with that plays into the visibility point that Luca made, which is, one of the most important things for us was getting our flag in the ground. And we had quite a lot of feedback on that, where people didn't know we were there, and people had seen, other LGBTQ plus people who were fans had seen that flag and thought, and the number of people, and I said this in countless panels, but the number of people who came to us and said, I thought I was the only one. And you suddenly start to realise, you've got a lot of people dotted around that football ground or dotted around the fandom in general who are thinking they're the weird one and there's no one else like them. And especially a lot of guys who are feeling like they have to butch themselves up when they go, almost put on a persona. And it was really, really clear when we started the group that this was something that had been happening, quite widely. And so the visibility is absolutely key. And I think in certain circumstances, although inclusion is absolutely a catch-all, and it should be, highlighting certain things I think can still be a good thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely, really well said. a few specific questions now. Emma, just want to come to you. Obviously, you've got some great experience within the women's game of coaching. And we frequently celebrate women's football as, kind of having many out role models in the game and generally being a bit more inclusive than the men's game. What's your perspectives on that? And, how would you describe the atmosphere in women's football?
So it's obviously a game of football. It's literally same rules as male and females. I think we're still, obviously, the FA banned women's football for nearly 50 years. So we're still way behind development of men's football. When I say that, sponsorships, the actual package round female players, like the elite of the elite. Atmosphere-wise, it's different depending on what level you're going to. So if I go watch my local team, actually, there's going to be less audiences there, or less people there, less fans there, than when I go to, because I'm a season ticket at Chelsea, where there's, before COVID was about 44,000, where it can be quite hostile, but that is down to the away team we're playing. So where London derbies are going to be hostile, that's not targeting LGBT. That's just because there seems to be some rivalry, and that's where some aggression and other emotions fans may have because they really want Chelsea to win that game, and then sometimes it comes across as aggressive. Slightly gone around the question, haven't I? I think the women and the men's game has two different audiences. So I really think the female game is really targeted at young females and young families, and then the men's game is it's open. So it's not just fans that are going to the games. With the Premier League, it's outside, it's international, it's massive. I mean, if you ask a member of the public, like a male player and a female player, generally, because more people are watching males football, and that's a fact, they'll probably name a male player and they may struggle with a female player. But I think we need to sort of get around that. It's different audiences. So you may have people that watch both sports, but you may not have so the small majority may be watching the both games, but actually it's not. So I think, and I really don't like how they compare men's to the women's game. I also don't like there's so much pressure on the first male player to come out, because if I was a male player playing at a high level, I don't think I would, because I don't think the environment's right. Because if the environment was right, someone would have come out. But again, I can't speak as a male playing at high level. I'm just a coach. So, but again, that's my opinion.
And I think I'd just like to come in and comment on what you make, Emma. Is it's a really great point. There's always a lot of comment around that first male professional gay or bi player that is to come out, whereas in the women's game we've got some really fantastic out female players lower down in the football kind of league. We've also we've got Luke, who's very prominent. We've got lots of LGBT plus specific football teams as well, with people who are happy to share their story. We know that there are us within the game. It's just about telling more of those stories and showing that more of us are there, I think. Luke, recently, we saw an incident at Tranmere Rovers where a player used a homophobic slur, and we quite often hear about homophobic incidents at the top of the game and the professional game. What can the impact of this kind of LGBT phobia at grassroots and lower league levels? What can that impact be on individuals?
It can be huge on individuals, because again, we're still growing up in a world where it's not the norm to be gay, and certainly in sport it's still not the norm to be gay, and it pushes people further away. It will make people question themselves. Like, let's remember right now that no one chooses to be gay or chooses to be straight. This is something that you have no control over, so it's probably something that they've already growing up with. Has a significant amount of potentially having a significant amount of trouble coming to grips with themselves, and then it's seen as a way of being attacked, and mentally that can be a real struggle.
And And Luke, have you got any thoughts? I'm just thinking about the audience who, will be watching this on social media, clubs and leagues, perhaps coaches, fellow players. Have you got any thoughts on, how people can perhaps challenge incidents if they're a part of it, or, kind of challenge perhaps teammates or other people after incidents, and, how to kind of handle those situations?
Yeah, well, firstly, it needs to be stamped out, like the use of that language and that. But and this is where probably I would argue, I reckon everyone else on this panel will actually disagree with me, okay, with a couple of things, because from inside the game, the world is very different to how people probably think outside of the game. And by the way, I'm going to go back on myself a little bit here, because I actually had something open up my eyes recently. But in football, in our dressing rooms, banter is horrendous, okay, and it's actually something I don't want to change, which everyone disagree with. And to me, one of the things that people think about people that LGBT, and one of the stereotypes, is that they're offended very easily, which is why they wouldn't have a place in sport, because sport is very in your face place. Gay people won't survive in that environment. That's what they think. And because of it, if you get offended by something that maybe someone else wouldn't get offended with, actually that's detrimental to trying to show actually we can survive this. And in our dressing room, pretty much anything goes. That is the environment. It is absolute shark culture, and that is the same at almost any successful dressing room. Now, what is key here is that is through consent. My players can say anything they like to me because I know it comes from love. If it comes from hatred or bullying, that's different. But if they'll say something to me, but I know they'll say something to anyone else in the dressing room, that is an equal playing field, and that is okay in our dressing room and in our dressing room alone. But understand that is through consent with people I am comfortable around. If it's in the terraces or from an opposition side that do not know me, that is where it has to stop, because there is no consent there. So how can I possibly know that is from love? And how would other people around feel listening to that? The caveat to this, and this is what I got pulled up on very recently. So one of my friends is really high up in, he is the chairman of the GFSN, Gay Football Supporters Network. And he said, Tuffs, this is all very well that you've grown up in that environment. I said, when I was 16, 17, if people took the mickey out of me, I got offended at first. But someone put their arm around me and go, actually, the reason they're laughing at you, having a joke with you, is because they've accepted you. It's because they like you. This is the environment. And because of it, my coping resources changed, my outlook changed. And I suddenly realized, actually, in this world, if they're not talking to me, or they're not taking the mickey out of me, but they're taking the mickey out of everyone else, that means they don't like me. They're treating me differently, which is why I embrace this culture and this environment. However, my friend said, look, that's all very well for you, but what if you've got a young player in your dressing room that can't cope with what you can cope with because he's not grown up with in your way? And I'll be completely honest, I've always pied it off, because actually a massive thing to me with football and dressing room is actually camaraderie. And I think the second that you put barriers between what you and a friend can say, I think you lose that camaraderie, and I think you lose that togetherness. And I think there's actually, my most successful teams have been teams that didn't have any barriers, but that's another thing. However, he said that will cause a problem one day. And one of my academy boys came out to me a while ago, and after he'd left, and I said, well, why didn't you at the time? And he said, there is absolutely no way that I was going to put myself out there, because I would not be able to cope with what you're coping with, and I would not be able to deal with what you deal with. You find it hilarious, anything anyone says, and you throw it back. I can't do that, and for me, it's a problem. And that really, really made me stop and think, have I been doing this the wrong way? And I've now adjusted my behaviour, because I'll be honest, a lot, and I guess what I teach a lot of young people is, if they're struggling with themselves and they're struggling with, if people laugh at it, if, for example, someone laughs at them being fat, for example, okay, there's nothing wrong with being bigger, and we talk about, but if someone does that, for example, if you laugh at yourself, it stops them doing it. It cuts the bullies short. We need to stop bullying, but there will always be bullies in this world. So what we need to do is we need to give people the coping resources to be able to deal with that and overcome it, and then we can, as we hunt the bullies down. Because let's be honest, as much as we hunt bullies down, we need to stop it. There will always be stuff going on outside of our eyes, outside of our control. So we need to give people the tools to protect themselves as much as we can. But in saying that, we now need to really think about our language. And unless it is now in a very select group that I'm very close to, anything like that, I will now put a stop to. And it's very difficult, because as I said, I'm the worst one for it. because I naturally take the mickey out of myself. Because if I call myself a this and a that or whatever, how can anyone else hurt me? Because I've just said it to myself, and it makes people giggle. And I am absolutely rambling now, so say shut up if you want to say shut up. But for example, I know I do. So when I took the Hartley Whitney job, right, when I got the first team head coach job in there, that is a little football club in the middle of Hampshire. I say a little, it's growing. It's the cheapest. They're one of the most wonderful people. They had never met a gay person in their lives. I had supporters come up to me and say, "You're the first gay person we've ever met." Now, bear in mind what I said to you about what they think of gay people, like on the media and who they would expect that to be. So I thought, if I go there and say, "You can't say this, you can't do this, you can't do that," what is now their impression of gay people? I'm now pushing them further away. So I actually use my brain a little bit. And to be fair, I like the environment anyway, but I had to be a little bit bright with it. And I took the mickey out myself, which straight away took the elephant out of the room. They were worried, they were tiptoeing around me. Can I say this? Can I say that? I've now gone and said it. Now they're more chill. I'm not saying that's the right thing to do. But from there, now people are starting to buy in. Now you can have more conversations. They say something horrendous, young people, about, is that the right thing to say around young people when they might actually be having their own? And now you can start to actually slowly change this culture. So this reason for the long diatribe is, if we go around saying you can't do this, can't do that, can't do that, and it is a flat, you're not going to get anywhere. You have to get people to buy into you and see you are no different. Once people buy into you, then they will listen to you, and then we can start affecting things for the younger generations that will be affected by these things. That's when we can start correcting people's language and choice. Do you see what I mean? So sorry for the waffle.
No, I think you make some brilliant points there, Lou, and there's some really clear things that stick out to me. For instance, the young academy player that you had, there will doubtless be, whoever's watching this, young LGBT plus people within the squads, within their fan groups, with fellow coaches who perhaps are just not out and open about their sexuality or gender identity. There will be people out there, and they will be kind of coping and kind of existing in the football environment as they see fit. So I think that's a really crucial point that you mentioned there, Luke, that there will be people out there, people watching this might just not know them. But I think it also reflects, that changing football environment, doesn't it? And that we're now not expecting, certainly in the male football environment, that we're not expecting male football to be one macho, very masculine type of environment. It can change, and it's really positive for it to change. Emma, I'm just going to jump back to you, and then Gemma, I want to hear a bit more kind of from a fan perspective. But Emma, I wonder if you wanted to come in at all and talk about setting that inclusive environment, even perhaps at a young level as well, when you're coaching young girls.
So I think young people get it.
Mm-hmm.
It's more the decision makers that maybe, because they're set in their ways, it's more challenging. But making really inclusion, it's all about listening. So you listen to the actual people, you take in what they're saying, and then you engage. So how can you make things better? And I don't think inclusion should really be complicated. It's listening to your target audience, understand, and also imagine yourself in their shoes, and basically try and make things better. So how can I make this better? And a lot of time, young people will find solutions to things, or they'll come back, give you info or feedback saying, "Oh, this could be done better in any aspects of football." And you're like, "Oh, actually, yeah, that's a good idea." But engaging them rather than be like, "You do it my way or the highway," which, as Luke says, it doesn't really work. People don't listen to you going, "You can't do this, you can't do that." Let's be open. Let's have a discussion, and not have pressure that you might get it wrong. That's where you have these conversations and talk about identities and be really open about it. I mean, with my players, I talk about periods and they find it really weird. I'm like, well, no, we're all women. We all go through this. Why can't we talk about this? So I think it's really, so it's really talking to people as people and actually taking in the information. Is how you'll get inclusion and asking them what can be done better. How can we do something better? And then young people come up with so much great ideas. It's really refreshing that soon they'll be looking after me when I'm old in a care home.
I think that's absolutely key. You probably summed it up better than I will at the end, Emma. You know, it really is that kind of listening and taking the time, and that should be an ongoing process as well, shouldn't it? You know, that constant listening, engagement.
You're never going to know everything, and you know what? Be honest. Make yourself vulnerable that you don't know everything. I work in disability. I don't know every single disability, but I'm willing to learn all different things, and actually sometimes get corrected on some things. Fine, we're all human, we all make mistakes, but having the willingness to keep learning, keep evolving, keep developing, to really be, it sounds a bit cheesy, to be a better person every day.
Absolutely. Gemma, coming back to you, you know, I think it's really important that this conversation has that fans perspective, and, you know, perhaps thinking, you know, there may be non-league clubs that are also tuning in. You know, obviously with Brentford, it's a bit more of a professional setup. What role do fans groups play, and what do clubs need to be thinking when they're considering the atmosphere in their clubs, whichever size of club they've got, and, you know, what steps can they do to create a more inclusive environment?
I think fan groups do have a role to play, and I think depending on the club and depending on the fans, I think those roles change, and they're not the same for every group. I know for some of the larger fan groups in some of the Premier League clubs, you know, there's a lot of social, there's a lot of getting tickets, there's a lot of different things that, you know, that come across then. You know, you might have a smaller fan base. You might have a group maybe such as ours, where actually a lot of people a lot of our members have been going to football a long time. They've got, you know, their routines and stuff, so they don't necessarily all want to meet up before a game or after, although we do sometimes. And then the role becomes something a bit different. One thing that we do quite a lot of is engage with the club, because the club are very keen to engage now. So that's really helpful. I think things like visibility are absolutely fundamental. One thing with and I always talk about our flag like it's some groundbreaking thing, and all the fan groups don't have them, but I think it's really important. You know, that being there what's it doing? It's saying to everyone we're here. It's providing something about which people can have a conversation if they want to. You know, it's people who might engage in some kind of chanting or so and so, or whatever, thinking, oh well, there's nobody here who's going to care. They know that there is. There is the aspect where actually, if we do have a player or a member of staff who's in that community who may feel like they can't come out, you know, they know that there's a group of fans here that, you know, we're there, we're supporting them. You know, it's not we're football supporters, so we're there to support the club and to support the players and to support each other. And I think for us particularly, and for me particularly, that feeling of being the football family, the Brentford family, as you know, as we talk about, is really important, because, you know, as both of the others have said, it's about relationships, and it's about having things in common with people and finding common ground. Now, when you're in essentially a work environment or a friendship environment, then you can do that in a different way. If you're trying to reach a big group, then, you know, you have to talk about the things that link you together, and that's being a Brentford fan, and that's what we try and focus on first and foremost. You know, then we talk about, okay, you know, certain things need to change, certain things make people feel unwelcome. What can the club do in their messaging? You know, how they talk about things. You know, what can the club do even in how they talk to their players and about their players, particularly the young ones. You know, and one thing I always think is, you know, when we talk about, you know, the pressure, like we did earlier on male football players who might be in the closet and want to come out but don't feel that they can, you know, as a football supporter, I'm thinking, what can I do to change that environment? Do you know what I mean? If I think it's terrible pressure. I don't know anyone who felt absolutely chill about coming out at work, you know, and that's in a day-to-day regular normal person job that's not being a footballer with all of the you know, media and other interest in their lives. That's a huge thing for someone, you know, and anything that we can do to show them that it's not going to be what you might think, then we need to do that, and we need to show that support. So yes, it's a different challenge, I think, when you're dealing in groups rather than individuals. But everything we can do to start those small conversations going on, then I think it all moves us forward. But yeah, I mean, in terms of the banter thing, I work in construction, and I very much understand a high banter workplace, and it is something where you feel you have to be a certain way. But I think I know from colleagues who don't enjoy that scenario so much, it can be intimidating, and I think it's something that, exactly as you say, Luke, if you've got to always be thinking who's in the room, and if it's you and your mates, and that's one thing, and if it's others, it's another. And I think you're completely right about that. So
Absolutely, yeah. And I think, as Emma was saying, things are changing. Younger generations are coming up with different mindsets and different ways of looking at things. I've got an eye on time. We're coming to a close with this discussion, but I really do want to kind of leave with a little bit of a call to action. I think there's been already some really fantastic ideas and really important comments that have been made that people can take away. But I'd perhaps like to do kind of, maybe let's call it a one sentencer from each person on kind of whoever's listening and watching this. What is the one thing that you feel strongly that they could do which will kind of help them create a more inclusive environment as a coach, as a player, as an official, at their club, wherever? Emma, I know putting you on the spot first, but that one thing that you think someone could do.
So for me, it's two things. It's empathy, so putting yourself in someone else's shoes, but also listening. You have to listen to the person you're interacting with, and whether you agree or not, but you need to listen, take on the information they're saying as an individual, and also respect them as well. So 3.
Excellent. Still a one sentence. Luke, what about you?
Load of commas in that though. Make it clear that those around you will be loved no matter what.
Yeah, brilliant. And Gemma?
Mine was probably focus on what we have in common rather than always what makes us different. And I think don't let other people's ideas, as far as you can, don't let other people's ideas or the fear of them keep you away from something you love. And if you love football, then don't let it keep you away from that.
Well, I think our panelists have probably summed this up much better than I will. Thank you very much for your comment. I mean, I'd just like to highlight to people watching, some of the really key things that were raised in this session, that inclusion is absolutely for everyone. We haven't had time in this conversation to really kind of delve much into, kind of transphobia that we see and trans people participating, or, kind of the experience of LGBT people of colour. But, take this as an opportunity to have those conversations in wider circles. Gemma's comments about those small conversations, keeping those conversations going. I think it's really important that people seek out those opportunities to talk to different communities. We've seen here, we all don't have the same experience. We've all got very different perspectives of the game. So, listen to what our fantastic panelists have had to say, and also listen to other people. I mean, I'm just repeating Emma now. Inclusivity really is for everyone, but really recognize that we're a diverse community. Visibility is absolutely really crucial, and I think, Gemma, you kind of highlighted that really, really well. Even if it's having a flag, even if it's reaching out to different parts of the community, and making sure that your communications are inclusive as well, and clear that your club, your organization is for everyone. That, I think that was great. The messaging around making people feel welcome who haven't historically been welcome, and the listening, understanding, engaging and acting, I think is a really great kind of idea that we all need to be encapsulating. And also what both Luke and Emma were kind of talking about, reflect. We'll do things where we think it's the right thing to do, whether it's kind of behaving a certain way in an environment, but always reflect on that, have that as a continual practice. And when you get it wrong, hold your hands up, you know, say, right, I'm going to learn about how to get this right in the future. So hopefully there's some really great ideas and some actions for people to take away. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you to our panelists for attending.
Thank you.
Thank
Take care.
Guys.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Beatrice, that was amazing. Thanks for hosting, and obviously thanks to our panelists as well. Just kind of following on from that, I know that everyone's got places to go. But yeah, the conversation doesn't stop here. I think that's just important to know. And, you know, if people have got questions, I'm always here at Middlesex FA. I'm sure, Beatrice, you're always there at Pride Sport. And, you know, within your different communities, at least there's hopefully someone that someone can go speak to. So yeah, we want to kind of keep these conversations going and get some actions from this. But I won't keep everyone. Thank you so much to all our panelists and Beatrice. That was really insightful. And yeah, this will be kind of shown everywhere. So hopefully it'll reach a good amount of people.